All right, now my hands are all sweaty because it's my turn to talk. Yeah, I love what I get to do and helping women come together. And so many of little bits and pieces of my story. And I did something that is pretty typical for me. I did not write a script or anything, and I know the direction I want to go, and I just want to share from my heart. If I were starting over, what I would do. And to help with that, I want to just give people a little bit of a backstory of where I was, what happened, and how this all kind of came to be. And you may know bits and pieces, and maybe I'll share something new. Um, I was born in 1971, and that was way before Laura was born. And back then, when your parents got divorced, almost all the time you went and lived with your mom. That was the way it was. In my situation, I went and lived with my dad instead. And my mom had two other daughters that were older than me. And we've had this discussion. If she watches this, I'm not saying anything disrespectful or hurtful to her. I truly believe that she did exactly what I would have done in the same situation. And it wasn't what she wanted, but it was what needed to happen. And so my brother and I went and lived with my dad, and my sisters went and lived with my mom. And almost immediately, I had two sets of parents because my parents remarried right away. And so I grew up in a blended family with 13 kids, only two younger than me. And I would go from place to place, and I never felt like I fit in. I was always the round peg trying to go into a square peg going in a round hole or whatever. And I just didn't fit in, or so I felt like I did. And they loved me. I was well loved. It had nothing to do with that. And then as I got older, my grandparents became my best friends. They got divorced. The weird thing was that they got divorced right about the same time my parents did. So they weren't even married anymore, but I would go see Granny Iris and I would see her and I would tell her about Pop and I'd see Pop and I was like the go-between. And it all felt very normal to me because that's just what it was. And I loved them deeply. My grandfather, we called him Pop, and he showed me unconditional love in a way I have never received before or since. No matter what, he loved me. And I knew it and I felt it. And they both died within months of each other, and it killed me. I literally could not get out of bed. It was 2001. My kids were little, and it was one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. And at that point, I was in my second marriage and ended up getting divorced from him. And so I continue this unhealthy cycle of going from person to person because I didn't know who I was. I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. So I kept thinking if I got this right person, then it would make me right and I would be okay. It doesn't work that way, ladies. It doesn't work that way. And unfortunately, the last marriage that I was in was abusive. And when your dad, who is a pastor, is telling you, get out, there might be a problem. And so I was very lucky to get out of that situation. And as I mentioned with the Matadoras last night, I told my story, my full large, like my abusive marriage story in that situation. And I don't want to go into the details. I don't think that the details matter for what we're talking about today. But for my whole life that I remember, and that's another thing, is that my memory is whack. It just is. Poor Laura, she has to read my mind and she has to take notes because she works for me for my admin company. And like people will ask a question and I have to say, Laura, I was on the call. I'm the one that said it, and I had no recollection of what was said. And it's been this way my whole life. I had seizures as a baby, and then I know I had some trauma. The divorce, when my parents got divorced, there was some real trauma there. And so I don't know if it was the seizures or the trauma or what, but my brain just doesn't cooperate in the way that I wish it would. Somebody earlier said that they wish that they had a better memory when I was talking to, on the podcast earlier today. And so I get that. And I know that, yeah, I see your note, Dr. Lynn. It is a symptom of ADHD. And it could be. And so this whole time, from what I could remember, I would tell my kids that what you focus on, you get more of. Think about what you want, but I wasn't doing any of it. I wasn't doing any of it. And so when as I was preparing and thinking about what I wanted to talk about on this, was that when I got out of my abusive marriage, I had a choice in that moment. Because I drew the line in the sand March 8th of 2015 and said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't know what it's going to look like. I was not able to leave until July of 2015. And I had a choice. Am I going to do this again or not? Or am I going to do the work? I'd already started Celebrate Recovery and been doing some of that. And then September of 15 is when I started Pathways, where I met Dr. E and Dale and a bunch of people. But one decision that I made that was very interesting to me when I got out of the marriage, instead of moving to where all the people that I knew were, I actually moved to a city where I knew no one because I didn't want to risk falling back into old patterns. I really wanted to have time for me. My family was like, "Why are you moving to Mesquite, Texas? You don't know anybody there." That's why. And then what happened, so my divorce lawyer knew that it was an abusive situation. And when I signed the papers, he didn't have me put my new address where he was going to mail them so that when my ex-husband signed them, he wouldn't see my address. And I thought that's so smart. I wouldn't have thought of that. A few weeks after the divorce was final and I was in Mesquite, Texas, I get a text message from my ex that says, I know where you're at. My lawyer had mailed him a complete copy of the divorce papers. So he had the address. And so I moved about 6 weeks later. I broke a lease and had to get out. And all of this to say is that in that moment when I had to move again, something snapped in me and I was able to finally focus on the gratitude. And I'm going to share some pictures with you to talk to prove this point and Dr. E's here and she's going to recognize this place really quickly. But before I moved for years and years, I had a very happy place. Can y'all see this picture of this patio? Yes. I can't see y'all. So Laura, can you unmute and tell me?
Yes.
All right, very good. So I had what I call my happy place in Irving, Texas on Lake Carolyn, that for years before this happened, I would go there for writing or like to get away. And I wasn't really writing so much, but I love this hotel. This was like the patio outside. They had the best bacon and the best hot tea. And I would order a thing of bacon and a thing of hot tea. And I could just journal or I could sit and just walk. It was just my favorite place. Whenever I ended up moving, after I moved to Mesquite and I had got this job, that was across this highway from this area. I worked with a guy named Michael that he lived in these apartments and he was able to help me find out how I could live there. It was my happy place, literally. This was the view from across the way. The buildings, I'm putting my cursor, I don't know if y'all can see this cursor, but this was the apartment complex I lived in. And it's the middle of this concrete jungle is what I call it, on this lake where I could go walk, and it was just beautiful. It was truly my happy place. And I got to live there, and I probably wouldn't have for because I wouldn't have had to move. And because I had to move, I was able to live there and the gratitude from that. And so if I were to start over, I would truly 100% focus on the moments of gratitude. The ladies that have spoken so far and the two coming up, y'all know a lot more about gratitude than I do, like the neuroscience and all the stuff. All I know is that it works. I can't tell you why, but I can tell you that it works. And so if you focus on what you want and you write it down and you like literally the tangible, the aspect of writing it down is so powerful. And so what Lori was talking about earlier that triggered a memory for me was I got out in 2015 and 20, let me just say 20, September 25th of 2015 is when I took suicide off the table as an option for me forever. I had dealt with suicidal ideations my whole, ever since I was like, I think I was 14, whatever seventh grade, whatever, how old I was then, 12, whatever it was. But something happened in my family in 2017 with my son. And I don't tell this story, and I'm not going to tell the story because the story absolutely doesn't matter. But what does matter was in that moment when I got that phone call, my life shattered. If I had not, it's truly the worst thing I've ever been through. And if I hadn't had the people around me and the training that I had done, I 100% know I would not be here today. And in that moment, if you'd asked me what gratitude I had, I would have said a very non-Christian thing. And I'd say, go F yourself. There ain't nothing to be good. There's nothing here. There's nothing, nothing. But there was. And Alicia will remember this night very vividly, I'm sure. There was four people that in my world at that point that I really felt like I needed to tell what happened and to have them hold space for me, but to share. And we met at one of the girls' houses and I told them what had happened and we cried and it was like snot cry. It was not okay. It was like, we don't, yeah, it was a lot. And we told stories and I'm sure we laughed a little because we're weird like that. But it was a rough night. And what I recognized in that moment through all my heartache and all the grief that I had gone through, in that moment, I had a choice to trust these people with my truth. And every time in the past that I had shared my truth with someone, they would leave every freaking time. And these people loved me and they held space and they did not leave. And so I had to do something different. Was I going to share and show up the way I knew I needed to? Trying to go through life all alone is what got me in the place that I was. And it wasn't going to work. And so if I had an opportunity to do something different, and I did, and I'm so thankful for Elisha and Lisa and Doug and Kevin. And Doug has since flown on to be with God. And Elisha and I both have ladybug tattoos representing him because he loved ladybugs. And that night, as you come into my world, if you start to see things on social media, you'll probably see that I share pictures of hands a lot. And the hand story means a lot to me. This is the night that the hands were born because we wanted to mark this moment, but there was not going to be any photos taken because that was a mess. And somehow God gave me the idea of layering our hands. and we took a picture. And so these were the hands that carried me. And I was so grateful. I, the gratitude in that moment, it finally gave me the space to believe. It was really the first opportunity for me to do something different or revert back to old ways and say, no, I'm not doing this. And so, ladies, I want to encourage you. I know Safe Heart Connections is my community and I love it. And if you are not already in the community, you would be welcomed, you will be loved, you will be reminded regularly that your voice matters, the world needs you, and you are loved. But if you don't want to join our community, it's okay. Find one. Find a group of people that you can be real with, that you can grow with, that you can laugh with, that you can cry with, that you can just be who you are, because the world will be a better place if you are who you are. I, the fact that I'm on this journey, and I say it often, and I don't think people understand, but the fact that I'm on this journey helping other women learn to create a life that they love, starting with them, is mind-blowing to me. Absolutely. What the heck happened to go from not even loving myself, not being attached to being alive, to saying, wait a minute. Wait a minute. There's something here. There's something good for me. And my voice matters, right? The way I show up matters. And I just want you to know, if I can do this, you can do this. God will give you the strength if you ask, and if you will lean into the fact that here's a beautiful truth. Here's a beautiful truth. God loves you exactly as you are, not as you should be, because none of us are as we should be. And before you think I'm really cool and made up that quote, that's not me. That was Brennan Manning. He wrote the Ragamuffin Gospel. But it's true. It's so true. You are loved, period. Hard stop, end of story. No matter what you do, no matter what you don't do. And when you can build your life on a platform of gratitude and being thankful for all the things that you have, and as Lori was talking about, even some of the things you don't have, right? Then if you're thankful for all the things and build on that, I believe it's the powerhouse of creating a life you love, because it opens your heart to all the good, and then it'll open your heart to love yourself. And once you start to do that, you can start to pour into yourself. And it's just a cycle. It's just a cycle. So I got a couple of things I want to show you. One is and by the way, I have no idea what I just said, so I'll have to listen to the recording because this was just freestyle, freestyle. But in the digital participants guide right now, this just was published. It's called The Gratitude Effect, a 30-day self-love diary. And if I were to start over knowing that gratitude is the key, this is what I would do. And it's 30 days where you'll be able to actually write down one thing you love about yourself. And then in the morning, you have three things that you're thankful for, the top three things to do for the day, and then a journal prompt in the morning. And it's just a couple of little lines. And then in the evening, you have a place for the evening routine where you share your three wins for the day, three wins you think you're going to have for tomorrow, and then another journal prompt. And it's actually in color, like color. And right now it's on sale. I think it's $9 and change or something. I'm gonna have to raise the price because it's color. I'm not gonna make anything on this right now, but I have it listed on Amazon. The QR code is in the digital participants guide. If you want that, please get it. The second thing is I just got this book. It's called Worthy by Jamie Kern Lima. And I've heard so many good things about it. And I was just going to read it myself. And I thought, wait a minute, as I'm skimming this, I'm like, no, this is a book club thing. And so we're going to start. I don't have the date and time yet, but in February, if you're in the community or not, I'm actually sharing this on social media, asking women if they want to participate. So if somebody's in the community, they can participate. If it's a woman and they don't really want to be in the community, but they want to do this, I can get them added on the calendar invite. But we're going to go through this book together as a book, doing it as book club style, where we'll read a chapter and then we'll come together and talk about it. And the more that we can learn to build community in the good times, then when life happens, you'll be ready to either be the hands or receive the hands from other people in your world. Oh, I don't know what else to say. And then I didn't ask anybody to ask me questions. So if anybody has a question, you can just unmute if you're on Zoom. If you're on YouTube, let's just see. Yeah, she knows oh,
Can
yes.
I just say thank you?
Yes, thank you.
This,
Yes.
all right, now I'm getting all teary. It has been a phenomenal week. I still need to go back and watch yesterday because I was working, but I think I do a good job with gratitude, and I have learned so freaking much this week and
Me
got
too. Me
new
too.
ideas. So thank you for
Yeah.
doing this.
Thank you, Mary. I'm so glad that you were able to participate. I know you got connected because of Kathy. Yeah. All right. Anybody else have any questions? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I could have shared to be encouraging. Just know that it it doesn't have to be perfect. I just recorded a micro interview with a woman earlier today that's in Germany, and we were talking about how it doesn't have to be perfect. If you don't love yourself, somebody else said this on, I think it was Rachel. One of the things she submitted to me before we were chatting in the community, going from self-hate to self-love is a really big jump. It doesn't happen all at once. So pick one thing that you can say that you love about yourself. Just one. Doesn't have to be all the things at first. Just pick one and focus on that. And I love to tell women, and this is not something I've come up with myself. This is just something I had done that someone had told me. Every time you go to the bathroom, look at yourself in the eyes and say something nice to yourself. How many times do you go to the bathroom and you don't even look at yourself? You like, oh, and then later you got something in your tooth, and oh, yeah, I clearly didn't look at myself because I would have seen that. Look at yourself and say something nice or something you're grateful for, because gratitude is the stepping stone to creating a life you want.